today's video, we are going to talk about the Z State and their bombing Lebanon, continuing to bomb Gaza. We're going to take a look at the conflict. We see a lot of things in Western media, things that contradict, lots of contradictory things in the Western media. We see things about ceasefires. We've seen a lot of different reports. We're going to take a look and see what's actually going on. Before we do that, though, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. You know the drill. Help out the algorithm. Please write some comments and share with your friends. So when we take a look at the news, we see headlines like this. At least 72 killed in Israeli strike on North Gaza. Beirut hit again. We see similar types of news just about every day. Yeah, we see that the Z State, they continue their bombings. They are attacking civilians. Yeah, we see that a residential tower in Beit Lahia in North Gaza has been hit. They've been sieging North Gaza. We saw right before the election that the Joe Biden administration, they said that aid must get into Gaza within the next 30 days or there will be no more weapons. That was before the election. That was to get Vice President Harris elected, which failed. She did not get elected. She lost quite big, and Donald Trump will become the next president of the United States. He will become president on January 20th of 2025. We got another video where we're taking a look at some of his cabinet choices, and we can see how they are the same or different from Biden's choices. That's a different video, though, so please go and watch that. We saw recently, though, that the Biden administration, they have backed out of their promise, and they are promising more aid to the Z State. They're also trying to rush aid over to Ukraine. We can see here that North Gaza is under siege. We always see in the news that there are lots of civilians killed. We're seeing that the people are starving. Yeah, the H group of Gaza, they are still fighting back, and they're causing lots of problems for the Z State. There is a lot of talk in the media about ceasefires, and we also see that in Beirut, Israeli forces continue to pound Beirut's Dahiyah. It says there's been over 145 attacks across the country, across all of Lebanon in the past day. We've also seen that the H group of Lebanon, they're also striking the Z State very hard, and we are also waiting for True Promise 3. The Iranians are planning. Nobody knows what they're planning because they are not telling us. We did hear that they've closed their airspace. They did that right around the election. They reopened it, and apparently they've closed it again. So we will see what happens there. There's also reports of Elon Musk, who will be one of the advisors to the new incoming president. He has met with the ambassador to the United Nations from Iran. The Iranian government, they have said that's false. Apparently also Donald Trump has made a phone call to Vladimir Putin and threatened him. Again, the Russians have said that's false. It seems like there's a lot of propaganda, and we don't know what's going to happen. But the Z State, they are getting beaten. We've seen quite a few times that Bibi Nuttyhead, his home has been hit, or it has been target of attack. They have been a target of attack again this morning, the 17th of November. We also see a lot of news here about protests inside of the Z State. Protesters blocked Netanyahu's office in Jerusalem. They don't look very happy. Yeah, they are demanding his resignation. They want him to resign. They want new elections. They're kind of tired of these wars. They're tired of killing civilians and getting hit back. The H groups, they have been targeting military. That's a different strategy than what the Z State's doing. Yeah, a lot of civilians inside of the Z State. If they haven't left yet, then they're out protesting. I'm sure there's still a lot who support the Nuttyhead. Recently, we know that Mr. Nuttyhead, he has dismissed his defense minister. We got a video about that too, but he put in a yes man. He's just telling the prime minister exactly what he wants to hear. There's also been some issues about Orthodox Jews being drafted. They don't want to go to war because, well, they read the Torah where it says thou shalt not kill, and they probably don't want to kill civilians. And there's also issues about free mixing between the men and women because the Z State is one of the few countries, I think Ukraine is another one, that is drafting women. That is another issue. If you'd like to see more videos about Orthodox Jews or about the more traditional Jews, I would suggest that you subscribe to the channel and help us out here. Write some nice, beautiful comments. That will help me to be able to have more time and more energy to make a new video. Going back to our topic today, we actually have a nice clip from Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter was the UN weapons inspector back in the early 2000s before the war in Iraq, and he was a Marine in the U.S. military, so he definitely knows a lot about the topic. He was recently on the Rachael Blevins show, and we got a short clip where he's talking about what's happening in Lebanon.
Here we are in a situation where Israel, it starts with Gaza, 300,000 troops deployed. They're exhausted physically, they're exhausted morally. Then the war goes up against Lebanon, escalation management. They get caught into a war of attrition. They're exhausted. Iran comes in, attacks, proves that the Israeli defense missile shield doesn't work. Nasrallah strangles the port of Elon and continues to attack Israel without, Israel being able to stop it. All of this goes on, and Netanyahu acts as if he can win the war in Lebanon, knowing that when they exercised it with fresh forces, he couldn't. So what has changed? Again, we have to start with the foundational notion that Netanyahu isn't doing anything that he's doing for Israel. He's doing it for Netanyahu. This is about the personal political survival of Benjamin Netanyahu. So things that wouldn't make sense if you're talking about the defense of Israel suddenly make sense when you talk about the desperation of a politically embattled Netanyahu. He does the dumbest thing in the world. He assassinates Hassan Nasrallah. The day that Hassan Nasrallah was killed, he had just agreed to a ceasefire. See, Hassan Nasrallah was a pragmatic man. He wasn't looking for escalation. He could be dealt with. He'd been in power since 1992. He knew all the major players. He was empowered to make decisions that other lesser people couldn't make. For instance, decisions about a ceasefire, etc. He assassinated Hassan Nasrallah. He did an act of desperation, weaponizing a Mossad operation to infiltrate Hezbollah with pagers. An act of terrorism like you wouldn't believe, but he implemented it, blowing up, taking more than 1,000 mid-level Hezbollah operatives off the playing board. So there's that. And then he believes that those two things will suddenly enable his military to win. So he goes into southern Lebanon with the military force. But he was wrong. Killing Hassan Nasrallah didn't stop Hezbollah. Hezbollah has redundancy, they have resiliency, and they have leadership. The pagers took out mid-level management, but Hezbollah, again, is a military organization that can absorb these casualties and continue to operate. Then he moved into southern Lebanon on ground where where Hezbollah has been preparing for 18 years to repel an Israeli attack. Every square inch of southern Lebanon is an ambush zone where the Hezbollah has planned what happens if Israel comes in here, what forces will we respond with, etc. So the deeper Israel goes into southern Lebanon, the more they walk into, continuous ambushes. And Israel's losing. They were wrong. They gambled wrong. Hezbollah exists. It's getting stronger. As we see every day, Hezbollah is starting to escalate. Remember, Israel bragged, we got rid of all Hezbollah's missiles and rockets. Really? What about the ones that just hit outside of Tel Aviv yesterday? What about the ones that hit outside of Haifa? You get rid of those? And the ones are going to hit you tomorrow and the day after tomorrow and the day after that, and on and on and on, because it will never end. Hezbollah is prepared for 18 years for this. Israel's exhausted. They've got nothing left. So what they do now is they are going to continue to implement the policy, what they call, and I mispronounced the name and I apologize, the Dahiyah Doctrine. Basically, it's a policy of collective punishment that is derived from their actions in 2006 against the southern Beirut suburb of Dahiyah, which has a heavy Shia presence. And the idea is that you kill so many civilians that you turn the Lebanese people against Hezbollah, to do so much damage against the civilian infrastructure of Lebanon that Lebanon rejects Hezbollah. Well, it didn't work in 2006. It hasn't worked in Gaza. It's been implemented on a regular basis, 2008, 2014, 2016, on and on and on. Didn't work. And it's not working now. All it does is certify Israel as a mass murdering, genocidal military with no moral compass, governed by these criminals, and they are criminals. It's hurting Israel, but it's also hurting the people of Lebanon. But the policy is backfiring, and Netanyahu now is struggling to come up with a solution. And the solution he's picked is to lie to the Israeli people.
Scott Ritter, he has told us about Lebanon, and the situation there is not looking good for the Z State. They've tried to invade Lebanon. However, they have failed. They haven't been able to cross the border and take any towns. The H group and the Lebanese, they have put up a strong resistance, and that might be why the Z State, they are thinking about a ceasefire. However, it seems like that Bibi, Mr. Nuttyhead there, he has been trying to impede any effort to make a ceasefire. Well, in the beginning of the conflict, it was the United States who held up the UN Security Council every time. Yeah, the Biden administration, they were very good about stopping any ceasefires. But then as the war turned, and it looks like the Z State is not hitting their targets, not hitting their military goals, and then the U.S. and some other countries like Qatar and Egypt, they have tried to mediate a ceasefire. However, it seems like that it's the Z State. Every time that doesn't agree, the resistance, Iran, some of these other countries, they have all said that there should be a ceasefire. I think the Russians, they have even taken a shot at trying to get a ceasefire. But again, the Z State will not agree. All these resistance groups, all these H groups, there's an H group in Yemen too. They all say they will stop if the war in Gaza stops. If that does not happen, it's less likely there will be a ceasefire, and it is more likely that True Promise 3, the attack from Iran, will happen. We don't know when, but it does seem like that Lebanon has been a quagmire for the Z State, and it's even causing them problems at home. There's been a lot of protests over the firing of the defense minister, just protests against Mr. Nuttyhead himself, the nutty prime minister who seems to be escalating these wars for his personal gain. He wants to stay in office. He's probably also afraid of going to prison. The hostages, they are the reason that the Z State saying they are fighting. However, they have not really tried to get them back. It does not seem like much is changing. It's the same thing every day. More civilians are getting killed, and the Z State just seems to be continuing its war against children and women and elderly people, against doctors and against hospitals, against churches and mosques, but they're not really fighting a war against any military, what we call a G-side, and we will see what happens between now and January 20th, and then again when the new administration takes over. Yeah, that is today's conclusion. So thank you for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and help us out. Hope that you have enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching. See you next time.